Okay, so now we chat for just a few minutes. This will not air, but it'll be on YouTube forever. So, let me ask you first, is there anything that we didn't touch on in
the emoluments clause lawsuit?
Oh, yes, and so let's talk about that first, because I had referenced at the top that you are suing the president. So tell us, what are you suing the president for?
I, along with some other lawyers, filed a lawsuit on Monday, January 23rd, that the president is violating the emoluments clause of the Constitution. And I realized until a few weeks ago, everyone thought emoluments were skin cream. But it's actually here a provision of the Constitution that somebody who holds a position of trust in the federal government cannot receive, quote, presents or emoluments, benefits from a foreign government. Our claim is that President Trump, through his businesses, owned in his own name, receiving tremendous benefits from foreign governments in violation of the Constitution. And it's pending in the United States District Court for the Southern District of New York.
I'm going to predict that lawsuit's going nowhere, because if you take the theory of it seriously, that means every time President Obama sold one of his books while he was in office, he was also violating the emoluments clause. A fair market transaction is not an emolument. And that's, I mean, I think that's different. President Obama got royalties from his books. If some foreign minister bought one of his books, that would have been an emolument.
If a foreign government bought a book from President Trump, yes, that would have violated the emoluments clause. But that's quite different than Donald Trump personally owning 76% of Trump International in Washington, D.C., and they're renting facilities to foreign governments. I disagree with John about fair market transaction. So long as President Trump is personally benefiting, and significantly personally benefiting, that violates the Constitution.
So we have a president who pretty much has said, the way I read it, legally, I can do this. What I'm doing is legal. And at the end of the day, correct me if I'm wrong, the only way he's held to account for that is if Congress were to decide that that he has done something wrong. And then I think you're talking impeachment, right?
I disagree. Marbury versus Madison in 1803 told us that the role of the judiciary to act when the president or Congress are acting unconstitutionally, it can't be that impeachment is the only remedy. Obviously, as co-counsel in the suit, I disagree with John's prediction. I think we're going to win.
Well, I don't even see how they have standing. The Supreme Court has long held the view that taxpayers don't have standing to challenge a general provision. And, you know, this is, they disagree with the policy or the position the president has taken. They don't have any direct injury. So I think it gets thrown out on
Erwin,
standing grounds.
If in fact you're correct and you win, what happens?
Well, we're asking for two types of relief. One is a declaratory judgment that the president is violating the Constitution. And second, an injunction they should comply with the Constitution. There's many ways he could do this. He could decide to divest of all of those things which bring in revenue from foreign governments. He could say at those places they'll no longer accept foreign governments as customers. And quite the contrary to John said, there's a Supreme Court case, Havens Realty versus Coleman, 1982, that says organizations do have standing in exactly this circumstance.
And then I guess if he were to say pound salt, I'm not going to do it, then it would be, then you're talking impeachment.
I hope that John and I will agree that there will never be a moment where this or any other president says that he or she will disregard court orders. Because when that happens, the rule of law is over. Then they can come around me or you or anybody up, and there'll be no protection. So I'm hopeful that this president will always comply with court orders, whether he agrees or disagrees.
Okay. Let's move on to the issue of free speech, because for all your disagreements, I'm guessing, excuse me, I may be wrong, but I'm guessing that maybe you agree on this. We have seen the riot, Erwin, over Milo Yiannopoulos, the satirist whose appearance, his aborted appearance at Berkeley, sparked all those riots. Lots of talk nowadays about not offending people, having safe zones on campus, and all this. A real issue on the college campuses. Where do you come down in the free speech debate?
I think it's essential that all ideas and viewpoints be able to express on college campuses. At the same time, of course, campuses have to find a way to create an inclusive learning environment for all students. Milo Yiannopoulos has the right to speak on any campus. However, if there ever comes a point where public safety can't be protected when he's speaking, then there has to be at that moment keeping him from speaking, but that's the last resort.
Because then that sounds like...
We don't agree on that last piece of it, because what you've created now is the opportunity for a heckler's veto, that if people decide that they're going to protest violently, that you can shut down speech that you disagree with. And the fact that the administration at Berkeley allowed that to happen, instead of ringing the building to try and allow the speech to go on, means that we are putting the thumb on the scale on which views we're going to allow to be expressed on campus and which not. The moment moment you let some guy throwing a Molotov cocktail shut down speech, free speech is over.
I agree with John that the campus has to do everything possible to make sure there's not a heckler's veto, everything possible to let the speaker go on. And I believe Berkeley did this. They brought in police from 9 other campuses across the state. They worked very closely with the college Republicans. And the college Republicans said that the Berkeley administration did that. But there were 150 individuals in masks throwing Molotov cocktails, caused $100,000 of property damage. So that I think the chancellor reasonably could say, in this circumstance, we can't protect public safety.
Do you think? I'm thinking of the the hardworking taxpayer out there watching on television these guys, in their black outfits, causing mayhem, throwing cocktails, burning things down, and saying, why aren't the cops just beating these people over the head, throwing them in a paddy wagon and taking them away? It did seem, it looks from the outside like the university, we can't stop this. We're overwhelmed and we're going to let this destruction occur.
That's not how I saw the videotape. Certainly, I don't want police ever hitting people over the head with batons. So let's put that aside.
Well, I'm saying, though, sometimes
but,
you have to meet force with force.
Of course, and I think if you look at riot situations such as this or what's occurred in Los Angeles, often it's very difficult at the moment it's happening for police to gain control of the situation. I think they certainly tried. I think they were overwhelmed by the number and what they were doing. I think Milo Yiannopoulos has the right to speak on any college campus. We agree every college should do anything they can to protect his right to speak, make sure that demonstrators don't interfere. But there is some point at which public safety says you've got to cancel it. We can argue over whether this was the point, but there is such a point. I think here it was reached.
There was a stand-down order issued from the Berkeley administration. None of the California officials weighed in a way that Ronald Reagan did when there was a similar incident back in the 1960s or early 1970s. He called in helicopters to spray tear gas to quell the protests and the riots. That allowed speech to go on and did so in a way that none of the rioters were permanently injured or what have you. There was a lot more the administration could have done here to protect speech. And I suspect that if it had been somebody on the other side of the political aisle speaking, and conservatives don't do this, but if it had been conservatives rioting and throwing Molotov cocktails, they would have not issued a stand-down order. And this is the troubling aspect of it, because we are, unless every one of these people that were involved in this are prosecuted to the full extent of the law to restore the notion that we're going to protect speech, we have allowed for a heckler's veto that's going to shut down speech.
I think he's bringing up that double standard on the college campuses between liberals
There's just
and
no
conservatives.
evidence that Berkeley would have acted differently if it was a liberal versus a conservative speaker. We don't know who those 150 people were. Some believe they were anarchists. I've also read on the web that perhaps conservatives hired them so as to create exactly this situation.
I thought it's conservatives always accuse the liberals of doing that.
We just don't know. They were in masks.
So, Erwin, I hear what you're saying, but do you think, objectively speaking, don't you think campuses, generally speaking, are more welcoming to liberal speakers than conservative speakers?
No, I think campuses allow liberal and conservative speakers. Okay. Justice Samuel Alito is speaking at Chapman Law School later this week. By any measure, Samuel Alito is a conservative speaker.
And will there be pickets? Will there be protesters?
I don't know, but talk to my friend Ben Shapiro on how he's been received at campuses. The notion that college campuses are equally welcoming to conservative speakers and liberal speakers. I speak at a lot of Federal Society's chapters. One law school, the administration sent out a note the morning of saying the event had been canceled when it hadn't. When that was finally corrected, they moved me to a closet in the back of the building so nobody could find it. These things happen, and it's really a travesty. And I think the more attention we can bring to it, there is a deliberate attempt to kind of skew speech and to make sure that folks are not given a full scope of the measures. And when you add violence to the component, which this Berkeley riot did and a number of other instances have done, you are really putting at risk one of our core Bill of Rights protections in the freedom of speech.
On the issue of free speech, and Erwin, certainly you have shown your chops when it comes to free speech. You recently co-wrote an opinion piece in the Wall Street Journal with the Chancellor of UCI, Howard Gilman, against something called the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act. What's that about?
This was a bill that was introduced that would have urged colleges, as part of the condition of receiving federal funds, to do more to crack down on speech defined as anti-Semitism. And it was very broadly defined so that somebody vilified Israel or said Israel should be held to a double standard That was defined as anti-Semitism. And again, where John and I agree is all views should be able to be expressed. People should be able to criticize Israel or praise Israel, even argue against the existence of Israel if they want. And they shouldn't risk loss of federal funds by permitting such speech on campus. And I think we'll agree on this.
I agree on that, but let's take a narrower version of that statute, if we could envision one. Your own campus, UC Irvine, has had Palestinian protesters that have shut down speech by pro-Israeli speakers, threatening violence, standing up and shouting down speakers so that they couldn't engage in the speech on campus. And I think we've got to put a stop to that. That's not shutting down their speech, that's preventing them from shutting down somebody else's legitimate speech. And I think the distinction between those two is critically important.
I'm hearing here, I think Erwin's more of a free speech guy than you on this issue.
No.
We agree.
When you've got somebody that engages in protest, which purpose is to prevent somebody else from speaking, stopping that protest is not anti-speech, it is pro-speech because it allows the other speaker to speak. I don't have the right to shout and shut down somebody else's exercise of free speech. That's not a free speech right.
How do you feel about this particular anti-Semitism awareness
I've not
act?
looked at the specific text of the statute. From what Erwin just described, I think it's too broad and it would be a violation of free speech. But I think a narrower law would be in order because we do have a systematic effort to shut down speech of people who are defenders of Israel. And that's troubling to me, the shutting down of the speech. So you think
there should be a law specifically targeted to the issue of Israel as opposed to just a law that would say any time a student does those kinds of things?
Yeah, I would make it more generic rather than specific. But I would restore the notion that your rights to free speech stop when your exercise of speech includes violent protests aimed at shutting down somebody else's speech.
On that, John and I completely agree. I don't believe that those who are supporters of Israel are more likely to be silenced than those who are opponents of Israel. I'm a strong supporter of Israel. I just think what we have here is victimology. Everyone wants to seem that they're the victim. Conservatives want to tell you they don't get to speak as much as liberals, and liberals want to tell you they don't get to speak as much as conservatives. I think generally college campuses do a good job, not a perfect job, allowing all viewpoints to be expressed.
Do you agree that there's too much victimology?
Oh, certainly.
Bingo. So more or less you agree on free speech. I'd say mostly on free speech, and I'll join you that there's way too much victimology going on there. And I think we'll close it on that. Thanks again, gentlemen,
Such
for all
a
your
pleasure.
time.
Thank you, Rick.
Such a
Thanks, Erwin.
pleasure.
Good to see you again.